everybody, this is JDGaming back today with a different type of plant deck for fun. Today we're looking at BLS OTK plants, which is kind of a spin off of the plant Hyperlink. Now that Dandylion is forbidden, synchros are a good way of making up some of the power level, and BLS, which is of course now at 3 for us, not really recently or anything, but you know, that's how late to the party I am. We could actually use that as a tool in order to kill the opponent as quickly as possible on top of the many link and synchro plays that we've always been able to do with plants ever since entering Master Rule 4. So this is kind of that type of a theme. If you like playing plants, then I think this will be a lot of fun for you. If you've seen the 𝕮𝖊𝖊𝖓𝗍 deck, one of the complaints that I personally had with that theme is that you have to play a lot of cards that are inherently dead and not helpful in extending your combos until a certain setup happens, but this one is a lot more consistent. It's pretty much that, but a lot more fluid. Nothing really feels dead when I play it, so yeah, this is something that I think is a lot more fun if you want to just go off with plants and take advantage of the fact that Lonefire and, you know, Brilliant Fusion, Predaplants, everything is still unlimited for the time being in before the ban list. But anyway, this is going to be a let's build. So as always, I'm going to go through all of my reasonings, some other considerations you could have for some of these spots, because there is a bit of flexibility with this type of a strategy. And then at the end, I do have the alphabetical profile that's just typical A to Z by card type. So if you just want to see that, I do have a timestamp down in the description box below. And then if you have any questions on anything afterwards that are standing out, you can always check out the middle portion of the video where I go through and talk about it. So without further ado, let's build BLS plants. The first step in the construction of any deck is to make sure we have the theme established, and this goes way back to 2011 Plant Synchro era when the mighty Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning, which we will henceforth call BLS, had just become limited from its many-year forbidden status in the TCG. Essentially, this thing was accessible as a Chaos monster with dark monsters like 𝕮𝖃𝖊𝖓𝖏 and Zangan, and light monsters like Effect Veiler and Thunder King Ryo back in the Synchrocentric Plant Synchro type of decks that were prevalent right before 𝗼𝗍𝖄's era hit, in which case in March they basically killed the deck off by banning Trishula, 𝕮𝖊𝖊𝖓, and Spore. Very sad time for me, but it's very different now. On top of having BLS and the Armory Arm that we're going to talk about for the OTK, we have now 3 copies of BLS at our disposal, making this a very viable option for killing our opponent. For those of you who have not seen this legendary card, especially because you're thinking, oh, it's unlimited, it must not be good, right? Well, basically, it's a Chaos monster, so you can special summon it first by banishing a light and a dark monster from your graveyard. So very easy to do, as we'll get to, but because there's an engine that's going to get both of those right to our graveyard with very minimal card investment. And then he has 2 massive abilities on top of his 3,000 attack and 2,500 defense, blue eye stats essentially. So target a monster, banish it face up, and then you can't attack that turn, which is, yeah, you know, it's pretty good. It lets you get rid of some annoying things. The primary effect we're going to use is actually going to be when he kills a monster by battle, he can attack again once in a row. And the way we're going to take advantage of this is using the level 4 synchro monster Armory Arm. It's totally generic, so you just need a tuner and a non-tuner. Has 1,800 attack, but usually you don't care about that. It's basically a pseudo-union monster, and what I mean is you can go and target one of your monsters, equip it to it, giving it a 1,000 attack point boost, bringing our BLS up to 4,000 attack, and then he has a Flame Wingman burn effect anytime the equipped monster kills a monster by battle. So basically that means if you go and kill a monster that has 2,000 attack points, right? So BLS would have 4,000 here, you subtract the 2k, they take 2k. Armory Arm will then burn the opponent for that 2,000 the monster originally had, and then BLS can attack again since it killed a monster in battle. So whether he attacks directly or kills another attack position monster, he's basically going to cap out and do 4,000 damage every time Armory Arm is attached to him and he's able to kill a monster, allowing BLS to effectively one-turn kill or OTK the opponent out of nowhere. So this is the core idea that I wanted to play with. I basically needed some engine to make it work, and it just so happened that plants fit the bill quite well. It's a good thing we were able to take a little bit of a break from the Brilliant Fusion Predaplant engine, but realistically, this is a perfect engine to play in this type of a strategy. So we're playing the 3 copies of 𝗮𝗄𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 graveyard, so that's actually a bonus, and that lets us go and summon one of our 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝗲. And I'll touch upon why we have 2 copies of this card in just a moment. But when this card is special summoned off of the 𝗿𝗍𝐻𝐶 Scorpio, we can go and add one of our Brilliant Fusions to our hand, which will let us yard a Gem-Knight Garnet. Again, I'll explain why I have 2 of these guys in just a second, along with a light monster, and then that lets us go and summon out our Gem-Knight 𝗣𝗏𝗍𝗍. So what does this all end up doing here? You have 1 O for Scorpio with a 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝗓. You activate your Brilliant Fusion, yarding something like Trick Clown, and, Trick Clown comes right back, allowing us to then have 4 monsters onto the field. So now the cool thing with this is we still have an extra normal summon off that 𝗣𝗏𝗍𝗍, so we'll talk a little bit more in detail about the plant engine if you're not familiar, but you can imagine, if you're used to this strategy already, how useful that extra normal summon is going to be right there. But even without any additional cards to combo off with, we have 4 different monsters with different names, and that allows us to go for the mighty Saryuja Skull Dread, who of course gives us 3 markers to summon into, and of course has the powerful draw 4, and then put 3 cards of our choice back from our entire hand to the bottom of the deck. And on top of that, as if the 𝗣𝗏𝗍𝗍 extra normal summon weren't enough here, Saryuja also allows us to special summon, so then that lets us put out some big combos. The reason I really like this engine here, because I know there's at least one vocal sub out there I have that really doesn't like this engine, the reason this fits so well is you're playing dark monsters that end up in the graveyard, along with a light monster very consistently, which lets us summon our BLS. On top of that, Saryuja allows us to draw for 4, and even though BLS is at 3, unless you're using a Soul Day which slows you down for an entire turn, it's not the most accessible card in the game, even at unlimited status. So this allows us to set up our graveyard in one fell swoop while digging for the BLS that we want, and while we're doing that, we put a 2800 attack monster on board, and then we can go ahead and summon out some additional monsters through an extra normal summon, through a special summon, and any other extra graveyard and spell and other types of summoning effects we may have, allowing us to effectively flood the board and end the game in a single turn. And as just a quick note, this is exactly the reason why we end up playing 2 Garnet and 2 Predaplant 𝗿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝗓. Normally, if you're just playing the Brilliant Fusion engine, you'd go 3 Brilliants with 1 Garnet, and that's it. But in this type of strategy, this engine, remember, gets us Saryuja, so any of these cards we have, even if we have, say, dead Brilliant Fusions, you could go and just shuffle all those away. So, yes, normally, you don't want to clog up on these because they're not very helpful, but when you play Saryuja, you're able to break some of the rules, especially when you're already playing plants. With that out of the way, it's time to discuss the core plant engine. So we're going with our standard 3 Lonefire Blossoms. When this card gets hit, and I'm pretty sure it's eventually going to, I'm going to be sad again, but it's just the thing that kind of happens. Got to beat the clock here, right? Post this thing as quickly as possible. We're of course playing our standard level 1 Plant Tuners. Glow Up Bulb and Spore both come back from the graveyard, and that makes us very happy for our Link plays, Synchro plays, whatever we have to do. Dandylion being dead, honestly, is extremely unfortunate in the TCG for us, because that Hyperlink deck that I just loved playing so much with the fluff tokens, it's just not viable in my opinion, at least without Crystron Needle Fiber in the TCG yet. So for now, that's kind of why we have to fill in some spots that we're losing with Dandylion's raw token generating power with, the raw OTKing power of BLS. But, you play one of each of these, they're able to come back. Bulb loads stuff into your grave. Spore comes back as a big monster, or just as a random wind monster, which helps to make 𝗍𝗍𝗑 to protect the rest of your board. On top of that, we play �11 Burial, which essentially gets us Glow Up Bulb for absolutely free, and 1 for 1, which, although it does cost us a monster, it's very easy to get rid of a dead card like an extra Predaplant or a Garnet or something, and you're able to go and summon one of these guys out, and then you get 2 materials off of it, effectively turning 1 for 1 into an extra special summon from your hand and 1 from your deck of the other monster. Then on top of that, I do consider Monster Reborn and Soul Charge as pretty standard for this type of a plant engine. This lets you go and double the effect of Lonefire Blossom, getting an additional card out of your deck, tutoring for whatever you want, and Soul Charge just helps you build such insane boards that you do want to play it. Originally, I was thinking, this deck wants to go second all the time, right? And I wasn't playing it. But you're able to build an insane board that will help you fight in the situation where, you're made to go first, you can't kill with your BLS. All right, just make a Nat Beast, make a bunch of other Link monsters that could stop your opponent instead. But on top of this core lineup of plants, I do like to play kind of an extension. I'm keeping these guys around because Mathematician is effectively a normal summon that serves as 2 additional copies of �11 Burial on legs. And when you have that extra normal summon off Gem-Knight 𝗣𝗏𝗍𝗍, Mathematician actually gives you a lot of extra wiggle room for plays when you're putting this guy on board and getting one of these guys ready as well. On top of that, I do like playing the one Rose Lover, who basically says when she's in the graveyard, you can banish her and then special summon a plant monster from your hand. And then if you do, that monster is unaffected by trap effects for the rest of their turn. So the cool thing with that is it's unaffected by traps. So your opponent can't even hit that thing with Torrential. But the whole reason we play Rose Lover, on top of course, sending it with Mathematician for an extra summon, is these guys here. So Super Solar Nutrient, I play just a pair of them. Effectively what they do is let you take a level 2 or lower plant monster, so one of these guys here, tribute it from your field to special summon a plant from your deck or hand whose level is less than or equal to the monster you tribute its level plus 3 or anything less. So that sounds really confusing. That's a lot of text, but essentially you have a level 1 monster. Add 3 to that, so that's 4. I could summon a level 4 or lower plant monster from my hand or deck. And I know the wording is very weird. I've actually had someone ask me a long time ago, like, wait a second, don't you have to summon exactly that level? It looks like it could be interpreted that way, but that's not the way it's ruled. That's not the way it's ever been ruled. You are able to summon anything that's level, in this case, 4 or below. This basically lets you turn any of these guys, or Mathematician, or Foolish Burial, or 1-for-1 into a Lonefire Blossom. On top of that, Lonefire can be tributed for any of these 3, and then you can go and tribute that guy for Super Solar Nutrient to bring out a second Lonefire Blossom. And the reason I bring that up, basically it's 2 copies of Upstart Goblin, but they're better in this deck. Yes, slightly conditional, but it works with a quarter of your deck, and so you're never really going to have them be dead. And it saves you in a lot of situations, because if you just draw these Tuners or Rose Lover, it doesn't really do a lot for you unless you have a way to turbo out your Lonefire Blossom. So that's just something I like. It helps round out the consistency a little bit. Honestly, I was debating whether or not I'd play this with Dandylion being forbidden, because tokens were really good targets too. Mathematician was very good at getting Dandylion to spawn 2 tokens, and you could make plays immediately off that. Load Dandylion, get 2 tokens, so you have Mathman, 2 tokens, token becomes 𝗿𝗍𝗄𝗊, token plus Mathman equals Nightmare Goblin. Oh, now you can summon this here, discard a card, extra normal summon. Like, you could do crazy plays, and even without Jasmine around and the plant FTK, I could see why they got rid of Dandylion, but nonetheless, these guys really do help as a supporting role for the plants, and so I would recommend playing them. And now that we've addressed the very large core, we're going to talk about some of the tech choices that help round everything together. Starting off, we're playing 2 additional copies of Performage monsters that we can hit off Brilliant Fusion. Starting off with Damage Juggler, this is another light monster, so if you already have Trick Clown in hand, or you prefer to have an Earth monster in your hand to summon, which we'll talk about in a second, you can go and yard this guy, banish him from the graveyard, and that lets you add either a Hat Tricker or Trick Clown from your deck to your hand. The main reason you play this, though, or the reason I do, is you go and you send this to the grave, banish it, add your Hat Tricker. This thing just needs any 2 monsters to be on the field or more between both players for a free special summon, and it's an Earth level 4. So think of all the ways we can access Glow-Up Bulb from our deck. We have Glow-Up Bulb itself, Lonefire Blossoms, any of the many searchers, and what does this mean? Well, it's an Earth level 1, Earth level 4. Oh look, it's one of my favorite monsters right here, Naturia Beast. So of course we are going to be playing Naturia Beast in here. Anytime you're forced to go first, you can go and just sit on a Naturia Beast thanks to Hat Tricker being insanely searchable and being a perfect pair with that Glow-Up Bulb. But basically, this makes it so you always have something that you can hit that's good from the Brilliant Fusion. And I'd recommend playing that trio right there for the clowns. On top of that, Hat Tricker's an Earth spellcaster, which is very different from the various attributes of plant monsters we have, like the Wind Spore or the Fire Lonefire Blossom, the Dark Predaplants. And so 𝗍𝗍𝗄𝗏 is a very good Link 2 monster, because you just need 2 monsters of different types and attributes, and she protects anything that she's pointing to by sending herself to the graveyard, which is insane, because now if you go and summon that Naturia Beast, or you go and summon Blackluster Soldier, you're able to protect it, and then your opponent's going to have a big problem trying to get through it with their defensive options. And on top of that, since 𝗍𝗍𝗄𝗏 protects herself whenever she's linked to something, it creates this nasty little lock here, makes it so your opponent doesn't have the easiest time picking apart your board. Some hand traps here, so I go with 3 Ash Blossom and 2 Ghost Ogre. Honestly, this deck, you know, the level 3 tuners are handy. You're able to get some bigger monsters, like through a Gem Knight Seraph Knight off of Monster Born. You might be able to get a Psyframe Lord Omega or a Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. You might be able to go and turn a level 4 monster like the Hat Tricker into a Black Rose, clear your opponent's board. Or of course, you know, they're just generically useful as well. You could even go with Effect Veiler in this strategy, because you can go and yard it as a light monster, or just discard it off 1/1 or something, summon it off 1/1. There are a lot of different things you could do with this deck, so feel free to experiment with some of the hand traps. I just like going with these because every deck goes and messes around with their deck for the sake of consistency, and Ghost Ogre can hit a lot of things. You could even experiment with an emergency teleport if you wanted access to Ghost Ogre as a monster on the field, because it is a psychic, but you know, I just leave that up to you. There is a bit of wiggle room. The main reason for those is because, again, you want to go second a lot of time to make sure your BLS, when you draw them, are live and you're able to kill your opponent before they have a chance to realize what you're even planning to do. On top of that, we play the 2 𝗼𝗍𝐿, and originally I was playing 3, but then I realized, no, we're playing 2 𝗼𝗍𝐿s, 2 Kumongous, and 1 Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. So this is a mini Kaiju package here. Of course, 𝗼𝗍𝐿 is really famous. Kumongous is just the 2400 attack version of it. It's level 7, so maybe you can do something with Glow Up Bulb. Sometimes it comes up. But essentially what you're able to do with this is these 4 let you get rid of annoying monsters, just sack them, they're gone. And then Kaiju Slumber is a dark hole that you could start your turn off with, put 2 Kaijus on the board, and at any time when you put Kaijus on the field, that's awesome because, look, that's an attack position monster. Now you can go and attack it with your BLS, do the 4000 if you have your Armory Arm, or otherwise, you know, do a decent chunk of damage, clear that off the field, makes it so you can confidently go second without having any issues, and then you can go ahead and, you know, dark hole your opponent's board, take apart your opponent's board, kill their attack position monsters, lots of neat interactions. And then, you know, if they make you go first, then honestly, you Saryuja these things away or discard them with your 𝗼𝗿𝐺𝐸 Scorpio. You never really have them be dead. Like, honestly, a lot of these cards I put in here thinking, is this really going to work, with a lot of cards that work best going first and then some that are better going second. But with Saryuja, again, you're able to break all the rules of deck building. And then to finish out, we're going to go and talk about the rest of the extra deck. So on top of 𝗵𝗍𝗍, we're going to go and play Proxy Dragon. It's just even more generic. I considered the Nightmare Goblin, but that once per turn extra normal summon is the same type of summon as Gem-Knight Seraph Knight, and both of them say you can only gain that one effect once per turn. So unless it's worded like double summon, you're not able to go and stack effects that have that same wording as Nightmare Goblin and as Gem-Knight Seraph Knight. So since this deck is so consistent with the Gem-Knight Seraph Knight, you're never going to get Goblin, is basically what I found. So awesome in theory, but especially with Dandylion gone as well, not really something I wanted to use. Proxy Dragon is pretty good as well. It's a light monster as well, so you can use that as a BLS target in a weird situation, and then that can serve as protection for your entire board, whereas 𝗵𝗍𝗍 is only able to protect the card she's pointing to. So very good, just generic monster here. And then I like playing Underclock Taker as well. This thing can also cause OTKs, kind of like Armory Arm. So if you have this thing up here and you have it point to a BLS, you reduce your opponent's attack by 3k. Whatever you slam into with that, you know, then you do the 3k through them, you can attack again. This thing can do 1000 damage, so let's say they had one monster, that's 3000 through it, 3000 directly, and then another 1000. So that's 7000 off of just those 2 cards, and the chance that you'll only have these 2 cards is like nothing, because you're probably already going to have a Saryuja on board, probably another monster, even if it's just like a Hat Tricker for an 1100 or whatever. This card opens up some extra OTKs, so definitely worth playing. And then in case you're forced to go first, you play Tri-Gate Wizard, because you can just put your materials into Saryuja with this guy, Underclock Taker, and or Proxy Dragon or something. Build the Co-Link 3 with all your monsters. Usually you're able to go Nat Beast, and that tends to be better, but Tri-Gate Wizard also has the flexibility of being really good going second, because you can banish your opponent's cards, so I do like it as a generic Link 3 option, because you're not even playing tokens anymore with Dandylion Forbidden. And then the other Link 4s are Borreload Dragon and Firewall. Borreload, you pretty much, you know, you play it because it's just insanely good. Firewall is insanely good in this deck as well, because you're able to go and tribute Lonefire Blossoms off of its side, or synchro with them, or link with them, and then you're able to keep summoning monsters. Honestly, this deck ends up having so many special summons and extra normals and stuff that you end up with no monsters to summon in your hand, more so than you run out of the actual summons. So Firewall's second effect comes in handy. Not only can you use him, you know, whatever your co-link to, target that many monsters on the field or in either graveyard, and then bounce them back as a disruptive effect, but you can use that proactively to make an even bigger board by returning monsters to your hand to then summon. So yeah, Firewall Dragon is good for both of his uses here. Then for synchros, I like playing Black Rose Dragon and Cyphering Lord Zeta at 7. Again, this is usually going to be either a hand trap with Trick Clown, you know, Performage Engine, or it could be the Spore along with a Predaplant. But Black Rose on top of bombing the entire field when you go second, which helps you clear and just make a game-winning push, you're able to go and banish a plant monster from your graveyard to attack for that 24, or if you have a BLS to drop, a full 3k. So kind of like �11𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Armory Arm, it just helps you cheat OTKs out of nowhere. This is one of those decks where even if your opponent has created a big board, your goal is either to lock them out with your insane board, or just kill them through all their stuff with all the summons that you get. And this card really helps you do that. And then alternatively, you know, if you're going first, you don't want to drop Black Rose, but what you can do is go for 𝕖𝐼𝐸𝐿𝐿𝐷, who basically says, hey, it's your turn, right? I'm going to banish your Link monster along with myself, so now you can't touch me, and then your Link monster is going to be pushed back to your main monster zone where it's not useful after your turn's combo has been stopped. So that's basically the way we play these guys. It was originally a light monster as well, so I was like, oh, you could play Honest with this in BLS too, but Honest proved to be a little too inconsistent for my taste, so I took it out. But that's another possible application. If you wanted to play Honest for, you know, old school BLS combos as well, you could definitely use that with your 𝕖𝐼𝐸𝐿𝐷. Then for 8s, I play the Omega and Scarlight. So Omega's obviously good, you know, disrupt your opponent's hand, just dodge, and then it ends up becoming a hard to deal with monster. And then Scarlight is in here because this card single-handedly just gets rid of your opponent's established field. So it's kind of like Black Rose at 8. And on top of that, you can spawn so many free special summons in this deck that you could probably just do, you know, 3,000 burn damage off of just this card, swing for 3k. It's definitely a good sweeper if it's not the first turn that you're dealing damage and you've done some already. Or maybe you're just able to put out all the monsters. I don't know, with Dandylion it doesn't come up all the time, but you're able to do a sizable amount. So I don't know, maybe your opponent soul charged, they lost some life or something, they paid for instant fusion or whatever. Lots of reasons why Scarlight can come in clutch. If nothing else, it's just like a Raigeki that'll help you deal with your opponent's field. And then the mighty 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is at 9. I know this card can be stopped by 𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏 of all things, you know, but realistically this card is still so powerful. You have Glow Up Bulb with lots of level 4 monsters that'll come out for free. There are a lot of ways you could bring this card out, and it's still monstrous. Non-targeted removal of 3 cards, all of which are probably going to potentially be useful to your opponent, is just absolutely nuts. And so 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 helps clear your opponent's hand field and graveyard so that you can make a game-winning push. It's a lot that you're able to do with this card, so that's why we play that. And there you have it. That is a look at my BLS OTK plants. And yeah, I know it got quite a bit long-winded there, but that just goes to show just how much I love this strategy. There are a lot of intricacies in how you build and play the deck, so many areas for customization. So if you saw something that I said that you're not completely agreeing with, feel free to play around with it. There's a lot of room for innovation with this type of strategy, at least as long as that Lonefire stays around, am I right? So basically, we're going to go through our alphabetical list here now. We have our triple Ash Blossom, triple BLS, and let me just take a moment to show, yeah, that Millennium Rare Korean, I just love that one. But anyway, double Gamma Seal, double Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, Glow Up Bulb, double Kumongous, the Sticky String Kaiju, triple Lonefire Blossom, double Math Man. And then we have our trio of Performages, the Damage Juggler, Hat Tricker, and Trick Clown. Then we have double Darlingtonia Cobra because 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 says, I don't care if you draw one. O for Scorpio at 3 to make sure we see it, Rose Lover, Spore, and double Garnet for the same reason as the Darlingtonia. Then we have triple Brilliant Fusion, Foolish Burial, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, Monster Reborn, 1-for-1, Soul Charge, and double Super Solar Nutrient for our 40-card main deck. And then on top of that, our extra deck is going to be a bunch of Link 2s in 𝗍𝗐 for protection, Proxy for generic protection, Underclock Taker for the OTKs, Trigate Wizard for both getting rid of stuff and protecting our board. Then we have Borlo Dragon and Firewall Dragon, as well as 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 for just the nuts. And then we have our Synchros. We have Armory Arm at 4, Naturia Beast at 5, thanks to that Hat Tricker, Black Rose Dragon and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 at level 7, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Omega and Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend at 8, then the mighty 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 at 9, and then Gem Knight Seraph Knight is our lone fusion monster for the Brilliant Fusion. That's the end of this video, but if you'd like to see more of this series, you can click the annotation on the right, or you can see the last video I did by clicking the one on the left. If you enjoyed, I encourage you guys to leave a like and share it with others you think who may enjoy it as well. And if you'd really like to see more updates, then subscribe to JDGaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.